Let's talk about what it means to make it in today's world and how I think a lot of people, most people, feel as though they are never going to make it. When I talk about this term making it, it really is talking about money and your career, right? Being able to have a successful life, a real, prosperous life where you can afford to buy a home and groceries, and it's not really a big deal, and you can save for retirement, right? Maybe you would call that the American dream if you live in America, but I'm sure this can be applied to anywhere in the world. Everyone wants this type of life, to just have a family. We don't need, honestly, that much, but just a basic, good life. And a lot of us feel like that's just not going to happen. It's no longer attainable. It has never been less attainable, at least ever since the modern internet age came about. Maybe it was simpler back when our parents and grandparents were growing up, but nowadays it's just out of reach, right? That's how a lot of us feel. I know a lot of people think that it's not even just a matter of making it in terms of being successful and being a big influencer that makes lots of money, right? Or you have a beach house, you know, it's not, I don't even think most people care about that kind of stuff. It's really about just having a normal life, a life where you have a reasonable rent on your apartment, or you're fortunate enough to buy a home, or you've got a decent enough car that doesn't break down all the time, right? You can buy groceries and not have to stress about it. That just feels way more distant than it ever has been. And it often feels as though you can be working incredibly hard and doing the quote unquote right things to get towards that, but it just is elusive. And I know this is a very generational issue, because if you talk to your grandparents or your parents, they'll say, oh, well, things should be easier now. Like, I didn't have the internet when I was your age, and you'll get kind of gaslit in a way that it's somehow your fault, right? It's your fault that you're not successful. It's because you're not working hard enough, and that it was harder for our parents and grandparents to succeed, so it should be easier for you, right? That's very common. But I think it literally is harder now. It is not a question of, oh, well, now we've got phones and Google Maps and the internet and advantages and ChatGPT. Who cares about all of that when the average salary simply is not able to buy a home? It's just not possible. I remember I had a conversation with my grandma about this recently, or, you know, even just maybe a few months ago it was. And she said, when I was your age, I had a home. I had 150 acres of land, and we bought it for $18,000. And at the time, my grandpa was making $25,000 a year as a professor. So you could literally buy a home with under a year's salary. I think my grandma was living in a rather rural area to be able to have that much land, but that is not possible today. It is literally, you will not find that anywhere in the entirety of America. It does not exist. And when I came out of college, I was making about $50,000 a year at a normal, pretty dead-end corporate job. And the average home is about $450,000. Last time I checked, that's not the same thing as a year's salary. No one's making 450 grand a year and buying a normal middle-class house like that. It just is so disingenuous to say that it should be easier now because we have all these advantages. It is statistically, financially, structurally, every part of our life is more difficult when it comes to financial things. The wages do not keep up. The price of everything goes up faster than you can even make in your raises. Like, you're not going to be able to compete with the rising cost of living when you only get 2% raises per year. That's what I got in one of my years as a corporate office worker. It's like, that's not going to work. It's not a matter of a bad work ethic. It is simply a matter of the math not adding up. And this realization, when it really hits you like that, you're like, man, like deep down, I just don't know if I'm going to make it. You know, it's like a quiet panic and an anxiety that we all feel that we're just not going to be able to keep up. And that no matter how hard you try, no matter how many hours you work, it just feels like, how am I going to be able to do it? It's not like there is that straightforward path that existed in the 50s and 60s where you genuinely could go work for a big company and work there for 30, 40 years and get a nice pension. I just think most people feel like, what are you supposed to do? There's only so much that an average person can do. Not everyone wants to start a business and become an influencer and, you know, work for 70, 80 hours a week to basically make the same amount of money, the same ratio of money that our grandparents did. let's go back a little bit. When I was younger, when I was a kid, it always felt like adulthood was just kind of a given, and in a way you'd be kind of excited. You know, you think like, okay, I'm going to grow up, I'm going to eventually maybe go to college and then get a job and, you know, move out and become a big adult, and I'll start making some money. I can start buying things that I want. I can, you know, I remember when I was a kid, I used to think like, man, I can't wait till I can buy soda. I can't wait till I can buy like the food I want to eat and stuff. When I grew up in the early 2000s, and so I felt like that was just what was going to happen, you know? Like it was a pretty linear blueprint that you could follow. You were going to follow the pipeline that our parents taught us because that's what they did. So they just assumed, well, that's what my kid is going to do. It wasn't really about being rich. It wasn't about making it per se. It was just kind of like, that is the normal level of stability that everyone is going to get, more or less. And that the normal version of life is now behind some sort of impossible paywall. Like you're just not going to be able to crack through it. You can't get through that wall when things just simply aren't adding up. It's like the goalposts keep moving, right? You know, I remember when I was growing up, a little bit younger as a teenager, and I would watch a lot of financial YouTubers like Graham Stephan and Dave Ramsey and stuff, and they would tell you, well, make sure that your rent is never more than 30% of your income. Make sure that you put aside this much per month for retirement, and that, you know, that was doable pretty much when it was like 2018, 2019. Like, oh, I could probably see myself doing that. But now, 6-7 years later, I know lots of people that spend 50%, 60% of their revenue, their income, on rent. And if you want to own a home, bro, good luck with that. I mean, just forget paying the monthly mortgage. How are you going to save up $100,000 for a down payment, right? How is that going to happen? Not to mention interest rates. This is something that you might not even really think about. But when you get a home, you know, basically nobody is able to buy a home in cash. So you have to get a mortgage. And so, well, you know, when you borrow money from the bank, you have to have a certain amount of interest that you're paying back to them so they make some money off of the loan. And when my parents got into buying a home, you know, like 2% interest maybe. I mean, that's very, very small. Like you can easily afford the interest payments on that. But now I'm pretty sure the average interest payment is like 7% for a mortgage. So not only are you paying the maybe $2,400 a month for your mortgage, you're also probably paying several $100s a month just in interest to the bank. How is that going to happen on a typical $70,000, $80,000 a year salary? It's very easy to view all of this as complaining, and I'm just yet another Gen Z that is just bitching about the economy and that, oh, everything's so hard now. I know it can be interpreted that way, but honestly, man, what's a guy supposed to do? I know that I'm speaking from a relative place of privilege, not just in the way that I grew up, but also that I am a creator on YouTube and I make pretty good money. And I know that I'm not struggling like I used to when I was only making 50-some thousand a year as a corporate worker. I know that I'm doing fine, but I want people to know that it's not fine for a lot of people. And I'm trying to speak on behalf of people that don't have these advantages and that truly are absolutely screwed. Because the thing about owning a home and making it is that if you have a home, that is considered one of the most stabilizing assets you can own. If you own a home, that is going to put you in such a better position than if you are renting your entire life. Because when you rent, you're not putting any of that money away. You're just basically giving it to a top 0.1% corporate landowner. They're extremely wealthy and then you're just going to keep paying the money. When you have a house, you are essentially putting that money away into a savings account. You are paying money to the bank in interest, but every time you make a mortgage payment, that is money that you are basically putting away, and it's going towards the value of the home. And so eventually when you own a home fully, after 20, 30 years of paying off your mortgage, you have a huge stack of cash that you could sell that home if you need to. You can do whatever you want. And so when you don't have that, when the average Gen Z or even millennial person just simply can't get to that, it's gonna be really bad, man. It just is. People aren't gonna be able to make it and retire. And if you don't have parents that can back you and say, hey, you know, I'll help you pay for your school and you can even live at home for a couple of years while you get on your feet, you know, when you start your adult life. If you don't have that, I don't know what you're gonna do, man. I really don't. I was fortunate enough to have parents that supported me, and I was able to start my YouTube channel the year that I was living at home after college. And that is such a blessing. But what are you supposed to do if you don't have that? And here's the point that I want to make that I think a lot of people get confused about this. They always say things like, man, the system is just so broken and it's just not working as designed. Oh man, you are in for a rude awakening. It is working exactly as designed. There is no way that all of this is not playing out in a way that completely, wholly benefits the top 1%. Who owns the massive apartment building that you rent from? Or who's giving out the mortgages? Who owns the banks? It's the people at the top. They are the ones benefiting off of all of this. Never has there ever been a larger transfer of wealth ever in history. They always talk about that phrase of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. That has never been more true. And it feels like when it comes to renting and how you have to borrow things to put money on credit cards to pay for your bills now, or you're trying to patch your life together with a side hustle on top of your main job. That's what I did when I started YouTube. It was a side hustle. All of that's happening. We're all trying to get by, while the people who already have all the money just keep multiplying it. And somehow throughout all of that, we are told it's our fault if we don't make it. Like, think about it. If there is some massive politician or tech CEO or someone that just makes millions of dollars a year, like $20 million a year, and they maybe they live an extremely extravagant lifestyle. They spend $2 million a year, right? They're left with $18 million to do whatever they want with. And I mean, there's taxes, right? Okay, so maybe after all that, they're left with $10 million. What are they going to do with that $10 million? Just sit on it? No, they're going to keep buying assets. They're going to put it into the stock market. They're going to put it into bonds and buy up more homes. That is why it's becoming harder to make money, man. When you have all of these rich people buying up the homes with the millions of dollars they make just passively, and they just got to put it somewhere, that drives up the cost of everything. And it's not the only reason that things become more expensive and that it's harder to make it, but it does not help when someone making $20 million a year is able to just buy up all the homes in the area, and then you're left just scrounging for scraps. There's this really, really interesting guy. I forget his last name, but his name's Gary. He's Gary's Economics on YouTube, and he's an ex-investment banker. He's from the UK, and he talks about this all the time. And so really, I'm just kind of echoing his thoughts on this, and that I want people to know that while it's possible to make it, and I'll get into that later, I want people to not feel badly when they realize that the entire system is just screwing you over. When everything gets this expensive and people are unable to buy not just essentially a luxury at this point, like owning a home, but just being able to pay their bills, it's not a sustainable future. It just isn't. Because essentially, here's how I think it plays out. It puts everyone into survival mode, right? It changes your whole mindset around money. You ever think about how pay in 4 has become a lot more popular now? If you don't know what that is, it's basically so many websites now allow you to pay in interest payments of 4, right? Don't buy $100 shoes up today, just pay in $25 increments, right? It's not a big deal. Just pay 4 times. You might pay a little bit of interest if you miss the payment, but hey, it's not a big deal, right? That's basically what the system is. You can delay the payments now and just worry about it later. Why do we think that's become more common? I really do think that a huge part of the poor spending habits and how American consumer debt and credit card debt has been incredibly astronomically high, it's because everyone, or a lot of people at least, has developed this just like, fuck it attitude, right? If you believe in your core that you're never going to be able to own a home and you can't retire, a lot of people are probably just like, well, I mean, I'll spend money then. Who cares, right? I'll just spend like $100 here and there eating out, or like, I don't care if I am that deep in credit card debt. Like, who cares if the system is so screwed up, right? Or maybe it's not even that far gone. Maybe some people are just like, well, I'm just trying to get to the next paycheck, and I'm trying to avoid another overdraft fee, but your brain just doesn't have the luxury of thinking long term. You're stuck so in the moment because you have to be. You're in survival mode that you're not thinking about 5 years from now, or thinking, can I just even afford groceries and gas, or do I have to pick between the two, right? And if you can't, then okay, what am I going to cut out of my life today? I know it's a big spectrum and that not everyone is struggling in the exact same way, but I know that there are people out there that are struggling like that. They do genuinely have to pick between X, Y, or Z. Do I have food this week, or do I have the heat turned on? There are people out there struggling with these problems, and it just chips away at your ability to dream. You know, like you start to feel guilty for even wanting anything more than just making it. Like to me, making it means success. And you've had a vibrant career that people respected, and you made a big impact, right? You made it. I don't even think people really think they can do that now. Like having a career where you're creative and you've got a sense of peace, it feels selfish, you know, like, oh, I don't deserve that. Because so many people are struggling and barely keeping it together. So like, what right do you have to dream about that kind of thing when you are just surviving? You know, it's kind of like people that only buy lottery tickets. It's like, what are you doing, bro? Why are you spending money on that? What right do you have to waste the little money that you do on lottery tickets when you're just surviving? I know some people think this way. I'm not saying that's what I think, but there's absolutely this mindset that some people have, or they look down upon people or themselves for wanting to dream when they can't even put food on the table. Because when that happens, when everyone starts to feel like it's not even worth dreaming about it and fantasizing about what your life could be and imagining it all, you're gonna lose a part of yourself. You know, the version of yourself that used to imagine like, man, yeah, I'm gonna go to college and I'm gonna become a game designer and I'm gonna become a game director and make video games and I'm gonna whatever, right? That all kind of goes quiet when you're confronted with the math of your life. And when you look around and realize, hey, actually, this all might have been one big lie. And I actually can't really make this happen the way that I thought it was gonna happen. And then of course there's the comparison game. Right? If you know that social media isn't real, like you know that, okay, I know I'm not going to need a Bugatti. I'm not going to need all of these extravagant vacations that people showcase. It's still going to hurt because you're going to see people your age buying homes and starting businesses and going on vacations and wearing nice clothes and living these big lives, right? You know, you're going to be sitting there trying to budget with your phone bill, trying to figure out what you can afford this month. And I feel this way, even like I want to emphasize that I know that I'm privileged, but even I find myself doing this. I remember I watched a video recently from, I think his name is Joe Frazier, like a British fitness influencer. And he's a little younger than me. I think he's like 22 maybe. And he's like, man, I just bought my first home. Just a nice, simple middle-class home. And he had saved up like 200 grand or like, I don't know how much. It was like a pretty good down payment that he saved up for his house. And I'm sure a lot of people watch that kind of video. Even myself, I'm like, man, I don't have 200 grand to put down towards a home yet. I hope I will soon, but I don't have that right now. And it's very easy to compare yourself because it feels like, wow, this guy, he's only 22, 23, and he's already made it. He's already got a really big social media following. He's already got enough money to buy a home with a pretty reasonable down payment. And I can't do that, right? And you feel bad about yourself. You know, you try to remind yourself that a lot of these people had help. You know, maybe their parents gave them part of the money, or they inherited something, or they were given an opportunity. And in a way, I know that that's a bit ironic for me to say because I was given help. I absolutely was supported by my parents during college. And like I said, I was able to live at home for a year after college, working, of course, but I had the time to live at home. But even when that's true, even when you know that these people have been given help, it doesn't make that jealousy go away. You still feel like, man, it must be me. I must be doing something wrong, right? I'm the one that's being lazy and spending all 4 hours a day scrolling. I should be the one grinding, right? It always feels like you're the one that's missed out on an opportunity that everyone else had already figured out. It's really hard to talk about this with your parents, I feel, or people from older generations, because they're going to get so defensive and they say, man, you know, you really should just cut back. You know, you got to just pick up another job. And it really is a case of just pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, right? And I noticed this a lot with the man on the street type of interviews where you see someone asking just a typical person like, hey, how do you feel about your finances? Are you saving money? And everyone smiles through it all. Like they're joking like, yeah, I mean, I'm really not doing very well. Like, haha. Like everyone knows like, yeah, it's not really good. It's pretty dystopian. But we all try to smile through that pain, you know? It's really weird. Maybe it's a coping mechanism, but I see it a lot. You see it on people's faces. It's not until someone feels completely screwed that you see that true deadpan 1,000-yard stare of like, I am fucked. Let's say hypothetically that you do start making good money, right? That you have started to attain some sweet bit of success, right? You land a good job where your side hustle takes off. Like with me, with YouTube, I'm like, man, this is really cool. This is, wow, doing well here. That fear of making it doesn't go away. At least it hasn't gone away for me. it just kind of shifts into a new form of, well, how long is this going to last? Because everything is going to feel fragile. Anything can happen, right? YouTube could shut down or massively change its policies. You could get laid off. An emergency could happen. You've got a huge expense, right? It's not secure. I know that with YouTube, for me, I feel a lot of dread at times. I do. I used to be, I think, more secure back in the fall when I was doing really well. And I felt like, man, it's always going to be like this, right? And it's been more of a struggle this year. I'll admit, it's not been quite as easy. And so it's pretty common, I think, to find yourself in this state of, well, I've got something pretty decent going here, but I don't want to lose it. You know, my sister knows someone at her job who is just an animal with working. This woman just works like 80, 90 hours a week probably. Wakes up at 5 a.m. She'll send Slack messages at 10 at night, like, hey, get this done, you know? Man, why is she doing that? Like, why would you work that hard for a company that doesn't really care about you? But my sister had an interesting point of, well, she got laid off at her old company. Now she wants to make sure that nothing happens again and that she never is going to lose her job ever again, and is terrified of losing her job and losing what she has. So she's going to work to a ridiculous standard to make sure that that doesn't happen again. But that's the crazy part, man, is that you can be working so hard and do so much for a company and just be like a stellar employee just to get laid off, you know, or just something happens out of your control. Maybe a company just has to downsize because that's just the way of the economy. My mom's company had another round of layoffs recently where like 10% of the company got laid off, right? Things are going to happen in your life regardless of whether you're expecting them to happen or not. And in that regard, it's never felt more fragile to me. And I'm sure it feels fragile to you too. Like, you could be doing pretty well. Maybe you've got a little bit of savings saved up. You've spent like 6 months or 7 months saving your paychecks in case something happens, like a rainy day fund, and then your car breaks down. Or maybe your corporate landlord raises your rent by $400. My stepsister literally 1 year had her rent go up $800 a month, bro. It was fucking insane. Like, all of that progress that you thought you were making, gone. Back at square one, my guy. Start over. And you realize, oh, I actually wasn't really doing okay at all. I was just barely okay. I was barely above drowning, not really floating above the surface. It's just wild how you can, from the outside, seem very successful, like you've made it, and still feel financially anxious all the time. Because that's how I feel. I think a lot of people would look at what I'm doing and think that I'm doing really well, or they have this illusion like, man, he's got a lot of money, or he's got a lot of subscribers, right? It doesn't really ease the anxiety. Maybe I'm become more anxious financially, but I feel like a lot of us can relate to this sentiment. And it's what worries me about the future a little bit, that it seems like no matter how much money you have or how much success you have accrued, the anxiety of maintaining that doesn't go away. I know when I watched a video years ago of a NFL player comparing their daily life with a college rookie football player, you know, like a Division I athlete. And the athlete was, you know, just going through his workouts and waking up and eating food, right? And just normal athlete routine, right? Going to class. All the comments were like, man, this kid is just like, he's working hard. He's trying to become a better player, and he's building up, right? He's trying to get towards the state of making it, you know, maybe get into the NFL, right? And then they contrast that with the NFL player who's just like, you know, the quiet professional. He's got a private chef. He is super dialed in. He just is trying to make sure he's maintaining what he's got. And it's funny when you think about that, like, it seems as though once you get to the ultimate position, in this case, an NFL player, he's probably making millions of dollars a year, you can still kind of tell that there's this angle of like, well, I don't want to lose it. Now that I've gotten it, I need to make sure that I diversify and stay stable, because I'm terrified of getting back to that point of barely, you know, still building up my skill set, right? Maybe that's just the natural course of things, that once you get to a position of privilege and power and you've made it, you still are going to have that underlying dread of, well, it's possible to lose it. Because that's the thing about life, man, is that no matter how much success you have, there's never going to be a point, I don't think, where it feels 100% stable, because life isn't 100% stable. You might feel a little bit more secure and, well, you know, I've got money in my investments and I'm making some passive income, and, you know, I've built up my body and I feel like I've got a good amount of maintenance here, but I don't know, when you have a lot to lose, in a way, that creates more pressure for yourself. I don't want to romanticize poverty at all when I say this, but I do think there's a weird beauty in having nothing to lose, or where you have only from here you can go up kind of a thing. Because I think about that sometimes when I have a video do really badly, or I'm just not doing well in some regard. Maybe it's like fitness goals and I haven't worked out for a long time and I'm just like, man, I really am just not doing well right now. In a way, you can treat that as motivation to say, I can only go up from here. I'm trying to make sure that despite all of this talk, it's not all bad, and it's not like you're doomed to failure. I wanted to make sure at the start of the talk that I teased that I do think that there is a way to get out of it all, that you don't have to be floundering forever, and you don't have to give up, that's for sure. I know it's really hard to not fall into the mindset of this is all pointless, because that's a very dangerous place to be, right? Like when you convince yourself that the system is rigged, and I mean, I do think it is kind of rigged, let's be honest, you just kind of stop trying, right? And I don't want that to happen. I don't want anyone to believe that their effort means nothing and that nothing is going to ever get better, because I do think that effort can translate into a better life. And although I am biased and I know I have had certain advantages that I've taken advantage of, I still feel like I can be a good use case example for that. When I graduated from college, I knew in my heart that I was not destined to work a 9-to-5. I just was not. I knew that it was going to be temporary, and that I had always had this itch of starting a YouTube channel or something. I had even tried to start like an Etsy business when I graduated college. I tried to sell things online. I tried so many things, man. It was probably a good 6, 7, 8 months of just nothing. And that's not that much time, honestly, of experimenting. And eventually it clicked with YouTube. But there was a big period of like, I just need to figure out something, right? I'm not going to be able to do this forever, the 9-to-5. And I put in so much effort into building up this channel at this point, man. I have put in probably thousands of hours, and it's not like it's been easy. There absolutely have been moments of turmoil and, drama and worrying about money and views and everything. But I still feel like it is always worth it to try, because I have absolutely transformed my life for the better because of it. I went from making nothing in the beginning to making a little bit, to being comfortable, to being really comfortable with YouTube and my job, to straight up replacing my salary with my job and then some. And now I'm just doing it full time, right? And it took me about 2 years to go from doing what sucked to doing something that doesn't suck, most of the time. And there's beauty in knowing that it is possible. I know it's not the most useful advice to say, oh, just become a YouTuber or just become a business owner, because that's not realistic for everyone. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone should do that. But I know that there's a certain number of people listening to this that do want more out of their life, and they relate to everything that I said in the first half an hour of this talk, saying, yeah, everything is really bad right now. I know that there are people like me that look at all of this as potentially a very negative dystopian future, but they want to do something about it, and they don't want to just accept this reality up front. My mentality with all of this has always been, well, that's not going to happen with me. Maybe I just am delusional and I think that I'm special enough that I'll figure out how to make money and to do things that have never been done before in my family and start a business. But hey, man, what else are you going to do? Just give up? Like, yeah, I know some days it does feel rigged, and that everything is designed to keep you just tired enough that you don't want to start your business. You're just discouraged enough that you don't have the energy to fight back. But when you really start thinking about it, like, maybe I really can do it. I know it's hard to accept that, well, fuck, I just worked for 8 to 10 hours today. I can't possibly imagine working any harder. But man, like, think about where your life could be if you did put in those 2 years to figure out a side hustle that turns into your life. Because it's not your fault. It's not that you're not working hard enough. Everyone is working hard, man. I know there's people out there that, are just couch potatoes. I'm not talking to those people. I'm talking to the guy that came home from Wendy's today, or the warehouse, or whatever your job is, and you're tired as shit, and you just worked for 10 hours, and you're like, man, I can't do this forever. I wasn't working, 12 hours a day with my corporate job, and it was an office job, so I'm not going to act like it's the same thing as, building license plates in a factory. but I can empathize with feeling as though this cannot be what life is all about. There has to be more. There has to be a way to make it. I wish more people talked about this, man, not in the doom way, because it's so easy to talk about that solely, but just being honest that there can be more out of life than you really think there can be. It's not wrong to say that you're struggling, man. It's not that you're lazy or weak. It's just that life is really shit right now, you know? This is just one part of the discussion that I want to have around money and being a young person. But I want to start off with this baseline dread that we all feel. And I want people to recognize it because it is real. It's not wrong, and you're not bitter and ungrateful to state that it's just pretty tough to be a Gen Z or even millennial in today's world. I want that to be a core foundation to recognize and understand that that's okay to admit. Some days you're going to feel okay, and some days you're going to feel like you're really slipping and struggling to keep up with your bills. And honestly, that's just normal. I mean, it's not good, but it's normal. It's not that easy to be stable, and I understand a lot of the concerns that people have, but I do think that it's very powerful to know that you're not the only one that feels this way. I hope that people can see past the irony of me talking about this as a creator that works from home, because I know some people are going to say like, oh, easy for you to say. I want people to look past that and just hear my words, that I know that it's okay to struggle. And I've been there. I have absolutely been there with you guys. And I know how it feels to not have that much money to work with and to feel like, man, my goals are just so out of reach, right? That's me. We're all living in this timeline together. It's not really a political issue. It is not a case of, race or anything. It's a class issue. It is us, the 99% versus the 1%. And I want people to know that it's okay to be struggling a little bit, but that there is a way out of it, and that you should keep going and take some rest when you need to, man. Don't be so concerned about grinding all the time, because I know I suffer from that, and I'm very hard on myself with my schedule. Like, get it out, vent when you have to. You know, it's not your fault. So here's another part of the conversation that I teased a little bit. What if I'm not meant to work a normal job? What if I'm not meant for the 9-to-5 life, right? When I was younger, I would often think to myself, I'm just not meant for this, man. I'm not meant to work in a cubicle. And I know that sounds so like, oh, I'm just so quirky and different, and I just, I'm so special. But I just knew within my heart that was not meant for me. It just wasn't. And I mean, there's always been people throughout history and even in the 60s and 70s and 80s or whatever that were just like, I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to go start a business. I'm going to do something else, right? Not everyone is meant to work in a cold corporate office, right? Nothing wrong with saying that. And I would look around and see people who, they seem to fit really well within the system. They wake up, they get dressed, they put on their suit and their, button-down shirt or whatever, and they clock in, clock out, they do what they need to do. And that works great for them, man. I'm not saying that everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. I know that that's not the case. Not everyone wants that. Not everyone is capable of that. It's really difficult to not have a schedule sometimes, or to have an uncapped schedule and like, well, I could just work for 70, 80 hours a week and have no social life and do nothing else but YouTube, right? Not everyone needs to do that. But I've tried to be that person, where I thought like, I could probably make this work. I could probably work the corporate job and, go into the office. I used to have an in-person internship where I worked in a corporate office, and I did it for a few months when I was in high school. And I did the routine, and I worked in a cubicle, and telling you, man, it just felt so wrong. It just felt like this is not what life is all about. It just is not. It was so unproductive. There's just always someone talking, chatting over your shoulder. There's the water cooler talk. There's just random little bullshit corporate politics. It is the antithesis of what I wanted to do with my life. I don't think it's because I was ungrateful or lazy, or that I didn't want to have the corporate lifestyle, because I know in a lot of ways it's comfortable and you can just earn an easy paycheck in an air-conditioned office. I just knew I didn't want it. I was fundamentally out of place. I didn't fit in with the culture or the nature of just not really questioning the system, just being told what to do. I've always been such a rule breaker and someone that just doesn't like authority, not for the sake of authority, but just when I think something is stupid, I'm going to say something about it. I'm just not meant for it, you know? I'm not meant to work a normal job. And I spent time trying to convince myself that I could do it, and I just knew ultimately it wasn't going to happen. Because you might find yourself doing that, like, oh, well, maybe I just haven't found the right job, or the boss just isn't a good fit for me, the team isn't a good fit, maybe eventually I can make it work. It's almost like dating in a way, where you're trying to find the right person, and like, oh, maybe if the person was just like this, then I would be happy. But what if you wake up one day and realize that there is no right job for me in that traditional sense, or there is no person for me, or just in the way that I thought that was going to manifest? Because that question can mess with your head, man. You know, if you realize that you just don't belong in that normal world of work, the 9 to 5, climb the ladder type of thing, and, you know, politic with people, like, where are you going to go? Basically, that's what people are going to say. Like, oh, well, if you don't go to college and you don't get a corporate job, what are you going to do? You know, your parents are going to ask you that. Your coaches, your teachers, or people from your life that maybe came from that more traditional background. Like, what are you going to do about it then? Because I know when I started my channel and I thought about it, I didn't tell anyone about it for several weeks, because I was like, well, I don't want anyone to know that I am not trying to pursue this lifestyle. You know, when I graduated from college, I pretty much immediately started my corporate job where I worked from home. And so I was working my job while also trying to start a business. Like I said, I tried to do like Etsy selling, like selling stuff online, and eventually I found YouTube. All the time, during that time, I was working my job. So I had my job and whatever side hustle I was trying to work on. But I didn't tell anyone, because I didn't want anyone to know that I was trying to get out of that world. Because in a way, it's kind of taboo. It's like, oh, you're taking a risk. Like, oh, you're going to become an entrepreneur, huh? You become a big shot, right? People kind of tease you about it. They're like, well, how is that going to happen? You know, people question you. They question your plans and your motives, and they don't think it's possible because they never tried to do it. And you wonder, like, well, how am I going to build a life that actually works? Because it's so straightforward and so simple with the corporate world, with the 9 to 5 world. Like, you just show up when you get a paycheck. But there's no rule book. There's no guidebook with leaving that world, right? You have no idea what to do. You might as well be thrown into the wild and just like, okay, good luck. Figure it out. You got 1,000 different things that you could do. Good luck figuring out which one is the right one for you. It's very scary. I know it is. I always knew ever since I was a kid that I was pretty creative, and I liked to make music and videos, and that called to me pretty early on. But if you have no idea what you want to do, but you know that the 9 to 5 is not for you, then that's a tough place to be, man. I think a huge part of this, obviously, is the way we are raised. Because I have talked about school at length, man. It trains you, it indoctrinates you for one path, the 9 to 5 path. You're going to show up to school on time, you're going to follow directions, you're going to sit still and do your work. You don't ask questions, you don't question authority, you're just going to pass your tests, get good grades, go to college, get a job. That's what you do, right? That's the roadmap. If you want a good life, that's what you got to do. And if you do anything else, then you're probably not going to make as much money and you're going to be a loser. And I know that when I was in school, when I was in high school, I had not yet developed this idea that I knew the 9 to 5 wasn't for me. I wasn't thinking on a time scale of that length. So I never really had to be confronted with the fact that, like, I never got into arguments with my teachers about, like, well, I don't want to go to college or whatever. Like, I was just assuming, like, oh yeah, that's what I'm going to do, right? But if you are currently in school and you do know already that, man, it's just not going to be for me. I don't want to go to college. I don't want to have a 9 to 5. No one is going to be there to talk to you about it, or very few people will. School is not set up in a way to reward that type of mentality. And in fact, I think it trains you. It tries to steer you away from that. Like, everyone is taught that college is the path. I remember when I was, particularly in junior and senior year, there's such a, like, time of the year, really towards the springtime, where people are like, okay, it's college essay time. And everyone is expected to write an essay, especially if you're in, you know, higher level classes like AP classes, where, like, okay, all of these kids surely are going to college. There can't be any business owners or entrepreneurs in here. Like, all of these AP students definitely will be going to college. If you don't know, AP it stands for advanced placement. I think those are just like the type of classes I took in high school where they're supposed to be meant for college bound kids, basically, like pre-college classes. And, well, if you're in that environment, you're like behind enemy lines, basically, where if you want to start a business or you don't want to go to 9 to 5, then you're in the wrong place, dude. And like I said, I had not yet developed that mentality of knowing that the 9 to 5 wasn't for me, so I didn't really have an issue with it. But I would imagine that you can feel really anxious and stuck and numb if you're in a place where everyone is thinking a certain way and you know that you don't fit in. You can apply that to anything, but I'm particularly talking about making it here and making a life for yourself. If you feel like everyone is going a certain way and you know that you don't want to do that, then yeah, it's gonna feel pretty alienating. Like, imagine if you're in school right now and all your buddies around you are saying, like, yeah, I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna become an engineer, or I'm gonna go study mathematics or whatever, I don't know, whatever degree. And you say, well, actually, I think I might want to join the Army Rangers, or I want to go to a trade school and become a plumber or electrician. Okay, right? You're going to get judged for that. I really do think that it's pretty common to be judged for doing something that doesn't really align with what everyone else wants to do. I know that I'm personally guilty of being kind of judgmental about this. I know when I was in high school, one of my best friends had always said, like, I feel like I just want to join the military. He would say stuff like that. And I remember kind of, are you sure you want to do that? Like, you're not going to make much money and it's dangerous and et cetera, right? And looking back on it, I'm like, why was I doing that? Why was I judging him for that choice? Because look at me. I've chosen something extremely out there, starting a business and doing a YouTube channel. Like, there's no school for that. And I probably would have felt badly if people around me in high school said, well, that's never going to work. I don't think I ever said that to my friend about joining the military, but I remember just being like kind of cautious and kind of judgmental about it. And looking back, I want people to know, like, if you want to join anything, if you want to join a trade school or the military, in my friend's case, like, power to you, man. Do what you want. If you think that that's the right calling for you, if you have always known that, man, I just want to become a Navy SEAL, or I want to become a plumber, like, do it. Who cares? If you want to move to LA and try to become an actor, then do it. There's nothing stopping you. I just want people to know that it's okay to not fit into the corporate mold, because not everyone is going to fit into that very specific, not even skill set, but you know what I'm trying to say? Like, the design of, like, the perfect employee, the person that doesn't question things and wants tasks handed to them and they just follow orders. Not everyone is going to fit into that mold. I am absolutely not the kind of person that can do that. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with us that want a life outside of a 9 to 5. I think it's just that we were sold one version of success, of making it, and no one ever told us that it's okay to question that. I wonder if in a way you could kind of compare it to being religious, where you might have grown up in a church where your parents and the people around you just tell you, like, this is the way, right? There's really no other way to look at it. This is the way of the world. This is how we are going to live our lives according to these principles. And if you question them, there's going to be a problem. That's how I kind of feel about the 9 to 5, because it's like an institution at this point, that it's expected that there's a certain pipeline that you're going to go down, and these are the expectations that the world has for you, and you're just going to follow it. And I know several people that were raised very religiously that have left their church, and they have, at the minimum, questioned their beliefs or straight up left their institution, and they're like, man, it's not for me. They become adults and they question what they really want out of life, and they become their own person. That's not that different to me than picking between the normal corporate path and doing something else. It's okay to question things, man. I've always said that. That's the entire slogan of my channel, is stay curious. It's okay to want something different. And it's certainly okay to not want to sit in a cubicle or wear a lanyard and answer emails for 40 years. Like, that's not a ridiculous thing to not want. Doesn't mean that you're a problem child and that you're broken. It just means that you're wired for something else. But even if you know all this, right, you've come to the conclusion that you know that the traditional path is not for you, the fear doesn't go away, dude. It doesn't. If anything, it's going to get louder. You're going to be walking into an unknown path with no guaranteed paychecks, probably no benefits, no 401k, no health insurance, no clear milestones of getting promoted, right? No one's going to tell you what to do. And it can feel like freedom, but it can also feel like directionless free falling. Because you can start to wonder, like, what if I am lazy? You know, if you have chosen that the 9 to 5 is not for you, but it's not working out and you're still unemployed for the last 6 months, like when I started my online side hustles and I wasn't making any money for like 8 months, what if I am wrong? You know, what if it's been years and I've just been trying to build and it's just not working? You know, whether it's a business or I've chosen to do a creative career like writing or acting, right? What if it's not working out? What if I waste years of my life chasing a dream that never pans out and that I end up with nothing? I could have just had a 9 to 5 that whole time. Could have been making money, could have had stability and growth. And so those thoughts are absolutely going to creep in, I'm sure, especially when you're comparing yourself to friends who are already advancing in their careers. I've thought about that as well with one of my best friends, where he's still in school because he chose to do a couple of gap years and just has had a more non-traditional path to get through school. And I would imagine that if I was in his position, I would probably feel like, well, man, I'm really behind, you know? And I've tried my best to not judge him for that, and I don't want him to ever think that I look down upon him for the fact that I've been out of school for years and he's still in school, because I'm sure it could feel like, man, all my friends are just doing their careers and they're starting to settle down with their partners and I'm still in school, right? Like, I'm sure some of you guys are in that position, and it would feel very easy to feel like you are behind. But if you really are cut out for doing something different, if you really do have the capability of not doing the 9 to 5 and doing something else, I think you know deep down that you're not lazy. You're just unfulfilled. You're looking for something that feels real and validating, something that doesn't make you feel like you're dying a little bit every Monday morning, right? And yeah, it's scary. You know, you want something different. I think you know that deep down. You know that you can do it, but it's just really difficult to make it happen. I think what we got to do is we have to redefine what work can look like, or what it's supposed to look like, because maybe the problem isn't that we're just not meant to work or work a 9 to 5. It's that we're only shown one kind of work, right? We think that work has to be this ass thing, that it's just terrible, garbage lifestyle. You're sitting at a desk, taking orders under fluorescent lighting. That's what work is, right? But there are other ways to build value and to do something that matters in the world, other ways to contribute. I would hope that the talks that I do in my videos are valuable to people, and that it's a form of work, right? This is my job in a big way. And I'm not sitting in a cubicle. I'm not listening to my boss bark orders at me. I'm not sitting in some cold environment. You can enjoy your work and also provide value. Maybe you're someone like me, where you just know that you want to create stuff. You want to do music or art or make videos, or maybe you want to teach. You know, you want to build something from scratch. Like maybe you're an engineer, right? Maybe you want to work with your hands. Like you want to be a carpenter and make bed frames or whatever. Or you want to build community, like do retreats for people and have like camping events. I don't know, right? And maybe also you're not motivated by money or status. You just want to be driven by impact and meaning, and you want to provide value. You don't really care about having $1 million a year, right? You just want to make sure that people value your work. All of that doesn't mean you are any less capable or valuable as a producer. It just means that your compass is pointing in a different direction, right? It's not pointing towards the office building. It's pointing towards the path in the woods, or the path that's been less trodden. If you know that you are just not meant for that one path, and that you have something to give to the world that is not answering emails, then fucking do it. I know it's tough, because the world doesn't always reward people who want to do things differently. You are not going to be rewarded initially for doing that. There's no job application, there's no LinkedIn post for you to fulfill, but slowly, I think more people are waking up to the fact that a normal job doesn't have to be the job. That's the only job you can have, right? And I think that's exciting. I really do. I think a huge part of this is that there is so much pressure right now to figure all of this right now in your 20s, right? You're a young person, you've got all the time in the world. If you're not grinding right now, it's only going to get harder from here, right? Like if you don't have a solid career path by 20 years old, something's wrong with you. If you don't have your benefits laid out, you don't have a 401k, you're not putting money away for retirement, you're falling behind. But whose timeline are we really trying to follow here? Like, who cares if someone else has an idea of what your life should be if you know what your life should be? Because the truth is, everyone is faking it, man. Fake it till you make it. A lot of people want to look successful on the outside, but really they're lost and they don't know what they're doing. Everyone else is anxious. Everyone is concerned that they don't have enough money, their house isn't big enough. It doesn't, just because you're in a corporate office doesn't mean you're doing any better than someone who isn't. If there's any decade where it's socially acceptable to figure it out, it is your 20s. There's no better time to be kind of screwing around and spending years figuring out what you want to do with your life. This is the time, man. So don't waste it. I know I'm doing back and forth here saying that there's so much pressure to figure it out and that's not good, but also, spend this time to figure it out. But it's okay to spend some years in your 20s, or really your entire 20s, just laying out what you want your life to look like. I kind of know what I want to do with my life. I'm 23 right now, and I've got a good thing going here with YouTube, and this is what I envision myself to do for a while, but I don't know what my entire life is going to be. I am still figuring it out. It might seem like I have a really good grasp on my life, but I am still very much in the early stages of my career, and you don't have to have a very concrete idea of a 40-year career laid out by the time you're 20. Because that is the thing, man. The world and college and school, they are set up to condition you to have this idea that it has to be a 40-year plan. Like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to try to work for this company, and like, that is how we have been raised for like 50, 60 years, that you're going to work for 40 years at a company, but I don't know what I'm going to do for 40 years, and that's okay. It's why I get so frightened, but also excited, cautiously optimistic about AI, because I know that AI is going to rapidly transform not just my career, but everything. And so the ability to predict what my job is going to look like in 10 years is virtually impossible. And that's kind of cool, but it is scary at the same time. When you acknowledge stuff like that there are forces that are impacting your career and that anything can happen, it kind of forces you to be like, okay, well, I'm only going to think on the scale of like 3 to 5 years then. I don't know if I can predict any further than that. And that's fine, right? It's honestly less intimidating to think like, okay, well, I only need to think like 3 to 5 years, right? I don't need to think about 30, 40 years because it's just, how could I possibly think on that scale? It's like if you tried to predict what your life is going to be like in 40 years, like, oh, I'm going to become a grandparent by this age and I'm going to be living in Bali or something. Like, you don't know. Why are you trying to figure that out now? It's kind of like when I was younger, people used to say when they were still in high school or like, 19, 20, like, oh, I definitely know conclusively that I don't want kids. When they're 10 years off from even considering kids, right? You don't know what you want yet. Like, get rid of this idea that you have to know what you want now, because you don't. Your ideas and tastes and passions are going to change. I know mine will change. So don't worry about having it all figured out right now, please. Yeah, it's really important to hear that. And I want to emphasize that it's okay to move slowly, all right? It's okay to try different things. It's okay to pivot and to take gap years and quote unquote waste time a little bit. You need to have that period of experimentation. That's what I did. Like I said, 6, 7, 8 months out of college, didn't make a dime. Probably lost money because I was spending money on subscriptions and tools and stuff, right? It's okay. You can be in the hole a little bit and not making progress. It's fine. And you certainly don't have to stick with one career path forever. You don't have to know what your destination is going to be, what the next step is going to be. If you are choosing to not be on the normal route, these are just givens, all right? What's funny is that often when you're unsure, when you don't know if you're doing the right thing, there can be little signs that you actually are on the right track. Maybe you start a little side hustle, like making music or making videos, and you realize like, wow, I'm actually like really enjoying this. The 2 hours just went by. Holy crap, right? I'm really enjoying filming and drawing, right? And I don't know where the time went. You're excited to wake up and work on your project. That is a sign. You need to take that and run with it. Same thing when you meet someone. You meet someone and you're going on a couple dates and you're like, wow, this person's actually pretty cool. And I find myself wanting to spend time with them, right? Take that as a sign of, okay, maybe there's something here. Those little moments matter a lot. They're proof, little subtle hints that no, maybe you are doing something. You are onto something here, And it's a fine line between just being delusional, like, oh, yes, this happened, so I must be doing correctly, because people make asinine connections, and like, I'm not saying do that, but if you find yourself really enjoying what you're doing and it's not a 9-to-5 job, then maybe you should do something with that, you know? Because I genuinely really do enjoy working on videos and talking and thinking about topics and you know, I love that stuff. I really do. I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't have made it this far if I didn't enjoy it. And when you find yourself enjoying something, you need to take that and use it as fuel. And yeah, I mean, it might be hard to see these subtle signs. You know, it's going to be a slower process. It might take longer to feel stable and successful to the point where you start to see these little signs. But I think if you just pay attention, if you're a little more conscious about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, you might find that actually this could be working out here. Maybe it's like you're working on a lawn care business and you don't know if you're really working, it's working out, and you're not getting as many clients as you thought, but maybe you're just driving down the road and some old guy walks by and like, hey son, keep up the good job. Just a little comment. That was nice. You know, maybe that's a sign. Like someone is valuing what I'm doing here. I got a little bit of validation there, just a little bit, you know? I'm sure you can think about some comment like that or some moment of, well, actually, maybe the people around me believe in me, you know, and people say I can do it. I think you can look into it, man. I think there's more positive, optimistic comments to point to than you probably realize. Because when you get comments and moments of validation like that, you realize that that's not a waste of time. That's the big issue with 9-to-5 jobs. They feel like they're such a waste. But when you have moments like this with your side hustle or your business or whatever, you can tell that is going to be a life built with value and intention. And that's powerful. Because that is the common point that we are all craving. We all want to have a job that actually matters. I don't think my job mattered at all, not one iota, my old corporate job. And that's what I had such a big issue with, that that I was making no impact. And I struggle sometimes to feel the impact with my job, with YouTube, because I'm not directly talking with you guys, I'm just talking into a microphone. But I will still get comments, and I read every single comment that I get, and I hear people say like, man, this is really helping me. You know, that talk was good, or, you know, I've really been enjoying being a part of your community here. That's powerful, you know, and that's telling me that I'm doing the right thing here. So if you are listening to this and you've been wondering all the same things about at the start, talking about financial dread and worrying about what the future is going to look like, and you know that the 9-to-5 life is not for you, just know that you're not alone. Know that there are people out there just like you, just like me. It doesn't mean that you're lazy. It doesn't mean that you are broken and bitter and ungrateful. It just means that you want to have more out of life. And that, man, that's a rare thing. Honestly, there are way more people doing 9-to-5 jobs than business owners, right? We are in the minority here. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, we're just so quirky and different. You know, I'm not trying to say that, but just know that that probably is rare and you should use it, and that you are born with a different kind of mentality and you should utilize it. There is no perfect answer. There never will be. I can't possibly tell anyone what they should do with their life because everyone is different. There's no way to know what business you should pursue, but you're allowed to question the system. You know, you're allowed to want more. I am such a questioner and rule breaker, and I've got that energy in me. I just know that I question authority, and I think everyone needs to have a little part of that in them. You're allowed to build your own way and say, hey man, no, I'm not doing this. I'm doing my own thing. It's going to take more time and it's going to be scarier. And I'm not saying you need to also drop everything and become a creator today, right? It's very powerful to have a job while you're building up your passion. But just know that maybe that shouldn't be your life forever. You need to give yourself permission to imagine something better for yourself. Because at the end of the day, we were not just put on this earth to clock in. We're not meant to just show up in a suit and tie. We're meant to create, to connect, to feel alive. And maybe your version of that doesn't look like a normal job. It certainly does not look like that for me. And that's okay. It's okay to not want a normal job. It's okay to want more out of life. Hope you found that helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.